We're looking at practice exercise 14.9 switch pairs. There's going to be two ways to do this. So the next one is going to be in the playlist link below the like button. There's one for where you can do this with a for loop, and there's another way where we can do this with a while loop. I want to show you these two different ways because there are two different ways of looking at the same exact problem, getting the same exact result, using more or less the same amount of code. So first, we want to write a method called switchPairs. This is going to be a public static void switchPairs. Inside of it, we're going to take a stack of integers. So we'll have stack integers. This is our parameter, and it's going to switch successfully the pairs of numbers starting from the bottom of our stack. And since we are passing a stack, the bottom of the stack is right here. So if you can see that, these are going to be switched and so on and so forth. If we have an odd number, our odd is not going to be switched at the back, or at the top. So this one is just going to remain here unswitched. So for this video, what we're going to do is the one with a for loop. And to do this for loop method, what we're going to want to do is reorder everything inside of here. And what I mean by reorder is we're allowed to use a queue as an auxiliary storage. So I'm going to quickly create a queue. The way that I'm going to think about this problem is we know that we have to reorder these from bottom to top. If there is an odd, we leave that alone. So this is going to have a check at the end to see if it is odd. And if it is odd, we're just going to add it back into our stack. Now, a queue is perfect because with a queue, we can go through and peek and then remove, and we can switch the values before we add them back to our stack. So what I'm going to do is first some reordering. And the way we're going to do this reordering is first we want to run while our stack is not empty. So is empty with a not in front of it. We are going to do a q.add, and we are going to do an s.pop. And this is going to pop from our top to the bottom to our queue. Now our queue is going to be in reverse order. So now that it's in reverse order, we can add it back to our stack. So while our queue is not empty, we are going to just do an s.push, or we do a q.remove. And basically we have just put everything back into our stack, but everything in the top is now on the bottom, and the stuff on the bottom is now on the top. And the reason why we're doing this is so that we can look at these values first. So when we pop off of our stack now, we're looking at these values, which is what we want to base our ordering off of. So now we have everything organized in the way we need to do it. We are going to want to examine this for half the size of our stack, because we're going to look at two things at the same time. So those two, those two, those two, those two, and so on and so forth. So let's do a for, and since we actually need to store the size, since it's going to be forever changing, let's do int size is equal to s.size divided by 2. So we get the half of that size. We'll have a for loop. Int a is equal to 0, so we start at 0. And we're going to run a less than our size, and then we'll have an a plus plus. So inside of here, we are going to want to look at our first two values here. And remember, these first two values. And these first two values are now at the top after we've done our reordering. That was the purpose of all of this. So now that we can look at those. Now, what we're going to want to do is just switch them. So we are going to have int, we'll do temp1, or just t1 is equal to s.pop. Remember, this is the first one that we're popping off. And then int t2 is equal to s.pop as well. So we have the two values here, and we just want to switch them. So we're going to add back to our queue. We'll do q.add, where we pass in our t2, and then we're going to do q.add, where we pass in t1. So we're basically effectively just switching them. So remember, this is all in reverse order with the 3 at the top. And now we've switched it to where we have 8 and then 3 inside of our queue. And we're going to continuously do that until we get to half size, because we're doing two things at the same time, so everything's added together. Now is our check for odd. If it's odd, which means if our s is not empty, then we are going to just do a q.add s.pop, where we take out the last value and we're going to put it into our queue. And from here, we're just going to want to add everything back in our queue. So this is our finishing up. We'll have a while loop, and we're going to run it as long as our queue is not empty. And then we're going to do an s.push, and then a q.remove, and that's pretty much it. Close this off, close this function. If you have any questions, as always, comments below. And I'm going to go over the other way to solve this using a while loop. It's pretty interesting, so check that out. And that's it for 14.9 switch pairs.